Hey, my name's Communique, and welcome to another reaction video where today I will be having my mom Taurus react to the Five Nights at Freddy's lore. Now this is part one because we're going to be reacting to MatPat's video, which is very long. The comprehensive plot I think is an hour and a half, and I think the first part's about a half an hour. I've watched this video already, so I know the lore, and we've both watched the movie. Neither of us have played the games. I want to. Just a note that obviously the lore for this kind of feels more like true crime than like a horror game.
Oh wow.
Because it's very detailed. So just like I mean I guess like if you're like easily squeamish or something, I don't know, just fair warning. And for the record, some of the things I know, some of the things that MatPat says in this video are his own theories, and obviously he backs that up with evidence, but some of them are not exactly confirmed by the game. But I am a game theory viewer. I tend to see the point in what he's saying, so I definitely tend to. You have seen some things from this guy before. I've shown you at least one video. I think he said he kind of went a little too fast, but due to the fact that this video is an hour and a half long, you know, going fast is kind of a virtue. You have seen him in the movie. He was the diner waiter. Do you remember in the movie?
Yes.
Yes. So that is MatPat. He voices this entire video. I think he's very good. So all credits to the video itself go to Game Theory and MatPat. And without further ado, let's start.
Today we end the torment. 19 books, 11 games, 8 whole years, all leading to this moment. The ultimate FNAF timeline is finally complete. The pieces are in place for us. Now all we have to do is put this story of tragedy, jealousy, and loss back together. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that feels like a kid revealing the class project that he's been working on all year. Except here, it's the class project that I've been working on for the past decade of my life. This one is big, my friends, and I gotta admit, kind of nervous. I haven't attempted a timeline video on this franchise since 2018. Back in the days when Mike was the crying child, Afton coming back was actually a surprise, and Fazgoo wasn't a phrase I'd ever thought I'd have to utter. But since the last time I did something like this, we've had 3 more massive games, the death and revival of the FNAF movie, and more robot kids that you can shake.
And yes, this was before the FNAF movie released.
Okay. This whole franchise, which honestly is why I'm here today. The lore at this point is complicated. It is full of speculation and theories. So to hopefully make it a little easier for everyone and to give us all a baseline to talk about this franchise moving forward into the future, it's time to reveal my current working FNAF timeline. But just before I do, I just want to explain a couple of things. First, this timeline is massive. Seriously, it is huge. This thing towers over any video project we have ever done on the channel. But
and they have done a lot, for the record, over the years.
The story of FNAF really boils down to the story of one man, William Afton. His successes, his failures.
You definitely know him from the movie, although the movie version is a lot different than the game character, for the record. The movie version seems to kind of do things without a reason or will, or a reason or true form, if you will. Well, William Afton in the game specifically has a very, very interesting method, and yeah.
World and his eventual fall to the monsters he helped create, only to then be reborn in a new digital form later. So sit back, grab some popcorn, or your pitchforks if you're the type to get upset when I say something controversial, and make sure that you subscribe, since this is going to be a video that you're going to want to come back to a few times in order to fully dissect.
Which is why we will be doing that, because we're going to split this, I think, up into the same amount of parts that MatPat did, which was, I think, 3 or 4 different parts.
I present to you the story of a loving, obsessive father who slowly descended into madness, and along the way discovered the secret to eternal life.
Chapter 1. Okay, so
our story begins not in the 1980s, or even in the 1970s, but all the way back in the 1930s. It was the throes of the Great Depression. People were in desperate need.
I know he always starts out incredibly odd, but it all ends up linking together somehow.
A simple roadside attraction called Fredbear's Singin' Show. The ads were plastered all over town.
This comes from one ad showed way later in the games, I think, that implies
like Mickey Mouse, Felix the Cat, Betty Boop. It immediately said that this, Fredbear's, was a place where you could bring the family. And the price, honestly, couldn't be beat. For 50 cents, you could get food and entertainment as you watched the local trained real-life dancing bear perform on stage. Normally, you only got to see dancing bears at large traveling circuses like Barnum and Bailey, where the tickets would go for about $1. That's $1.
You remember such things, I assume, since you were in New York. That was where...
Oh, I went to Barnum and Bailey. Yeah,
at one point?
That was in the 70s, though. That was in the 70s. Yeah, it was fun.
Food, but this was a smaller show, like the type from the Vaughn Brothers or the Robbins Brothers, where tickets would sell for just a mere 50 cents. Watching
It was more than that.
Yeah.
In the 70s, yeah.
So much was wrong with the world.
And in the 30s, it would be way more, so having 50 cents is probably good.
Looking for a quick meal, but it left a permanent impression on one little boy, capturing his imagination in a way that nothing else had. One little boy named Billy. That was his nickname at least, but his parents liked to call him William. William Afton. The bear could dance. He could sing.
Born in the 30s is what he assumes. Mainly because the timeline is so messed up at this point that you have to figure out where one person could fit all of this in, at which point, how early can they be born to see this and then do all of that and still be able to do all of that and still fit into a very tight spot.
If he was born in the
30s and then everything occurs in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, then he would be around 40, 50.
Yeah. And then as the time goes on, he gets into his 60s, and that's, yeah.
He had a keen mind for business, but he wasn't the most creative. How do you make a singing, dancing bear come to life? The best he could do was using rudimentary costumes. We know, based on the retro poster that was hidden in Security Breach, that at least at one point, Fredbear was an actual bear. Dancing bear shows were a real form of entertainment. The only problem is that, timing-wise, none of our main characters would be the people in charge of that business in the 30s, and...
Do you think he tried like a puppet, like a puppeteer kind of thing?
Funnily enough, we'll get to a character called the Puppet later, but not really. It ends up being, I think, more... He's going to explain in a second.
Best case scenario, if Afton's running the
ends up more like Disney.
That still puts him at nearly 70
Cartoon?
when the first pizzeria opens.
That happens too, but not now.
It doesn't make a lot of logical sense because he doesn't become immortal until his first death in Springtrap. That's why I suspect that Fredbear's singing show was either a family business that Afton then carried on to a new generation, or something that he saw as a kid and just wanted to recreate when he grew up. William was inspired by the work of Walt Disney, who throughout the 50s and 60s was pioneering the use of mascot suits throughout his
mascot suits. There you go.
That's what I was thinking. Okay.
This allowed the performers wearing the suits to use their natural arms and hands to interact with the guests, as opposed to the older models where the arms would just hang limply by their sides. Finally, with a simple mascot suit, he would be able to realize his childhood dream. He would be able to bring Fredbear to life, to appeal to the kids, and for...
And this is how it all begins.
He changed Fredbear from a realistic brown animal to a cartoonish
Is it
yellow
Fredbear
bear.
or Fazbear?
Freddy Fazbear becomes a little
Fazbear.
bit later.
Okay.
In the initial first stages, it's called Fredbear's, but it changes as the time goes on.
Okay.
Purple rabbit with a purple vest and matching tie.
Bonnie.
Bonnie the bunny. Well,
Yep.
Fredbear was certainly his first love.
By the way, the yellow rabbit. Remember the yellow rabbit, because that is something that they included in the movie, specifically an older yellow rabbit suit, because remember that in the actual, it's blue now. Or rather purple-ish.
Not a Springtrap suit. This is something much more
Something-
rudimentary.
it's
Even at a time
something-
before
yeah.
animatronics were a part of the story. That's why I suspect
It's
that
something
actually
beforehand.
first. There's also a whole separate discussion to be had here about the habits and rituals of serial killers. So the fact that he's
Considering that he actually takes in everything.
In this whole franchise, only one set of characters have themselves 5 fingers, the Nightmares. Even Golden Freddy.
And we'll get to the
Fredbear
Nightmares
was a
eventually.
Yikes.
suit at one point.
I assume that might be somewhat about your reaction.
And that whoever is having the FNAF 4 nightmares, if they even are nightmares, saw those mascots.
And there's a whole other thing with that as well.
He wanted to bring things to life from the...
It's very interesting how this goes downhill, because it doesn't feel... At this point, it kind of feels like... We'll get to it, but the thing is, like, it begins so happily, right?
Other people saw the success of his idea, and they wanted in. Enter Chica's Party World, a
there's
rival
always-
restaurant starring performing animal characters. His idea, except they did it better. William may have been the first,
And they
but
did it better.
honestly,
Because he's somewhat of an inventor, he's got an idea, but like he said earlier, he's not creative, and he doesn't really know how to work mechanics. So he can put in people in suits, but he can't make, it really feel that like they're independent characters. Well, someone else can.
This restaurant was able to do the thing that he always
Wow,
wanted to
actually
do.
like
Make the
Chica the
animals
best.
actually magic that came from the mind of a brilliant creator named Henry Emily. This Henry
Do you remember when we were watching Lost and I said, I watched the FNAF lore and there was another, because there's a person in Lost called Henry Gale. And the thing is, I was like, I'm going to mess that up so much. Because there's another person named with that short last name that sounds like another first name.
Off to one side of Chica's party world was a small cabaret stage featuring an elephant magician. On the other, a hippo known to ramble on and...
By the way,
Okay, he didn't use these, right?
not yet, but there is a scene.
And a hippo.
There is a scene with the hippo in one of the games called Ultimate Custom Night, where I think you essentially go through all the animatronics that have ever been built and meet them one by one.
Oh.
And the way...
Are there any sisters?
The way that Mr.
Like the sister location?
We'll get to the sister location. Yeah.
Because I don't know what the animals are in that one.
They're not. Because
Are they the same?
Some of them are. I know Foxy gets a recolor.
Oh.
But most of those actually resemble humans in Sister Location because
no kidding.
Because we're going away. Because at that point in Sister Location, we're going far away from the initial beginnings of a restaurant and show, and more into his darn experiments on trying to figure out if he can create immortality. So, yeah. And I know, it's an odd conversion, but I do want to bring up a point about Mr. Hippo here, that he actually, in the way that there's a voice actor, and the way that he speaks in Ultimate Custom Night, it's weird, but it ultimately gives me this inexorable feeling of, like, Grandpa something. I'm not kidding. He's got like a New York accent. He starts out and he goes, but that reminds me of, and you know what? We were sitting by the park and we were feeding the ducks, and he goes on and...
My friend, you have met a terrible, terrible demise. But, I don't feel too bad about it. After all, if...
It's great, because I was like, that somehow, that reminds me.
That one was more of a joke for the parents, featuring a yellow chicken thing with a southern drawl named Chica, backed by a band of other
And Carl.
Bear, but bears were
his thing.
Why not a cow or a horse? Something with the country theme a bit better. Why not to be a bear? And adding insult to injury,
sure,
they
like
had
a
the
rooster or
nerve to
something.
call. I've suspected that the mediocre melodies played a much more important role in the story than just being a bunch more animatronics to fill out the
Initially called Mediocre Melodies, I believe.
Which is close to Fredbear. And yet there are two... Also, this is future Matt Pat here coming back to add this one in. Seems like the recently released character encyclopedia has backed up all of this speculation. I've had this timeline...
He manages to guess it right before anything ever comes out.
Oh,
and
before
that is
the encyclopedia.
before the actual like game creator will back it up, he'll get it beforehand.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I like MatPat, I think, so much, because he manages to get there just a little bit before sometimes even the creators do.
Wow.
Seems like we might actually have nailed it. They actively call out the suspicious similarities to the main Fredbear.
Off-brand.
This also mirrors a lot of what happened in the real life. Again, we've gone into that in detail with other videos, just wanted to remind you all of that here. But why would I call out the...
So that video apparently happened on Food Theory, because they actually have quite a few channels. They have Game Theory, Film Theory, Style Theory, Food Theory, and I think there's another, but I forget.
It is mentioned in the source code teasing sister location. So it is out there.
Just close to Undertale, whenever you want to figure out something, you normally want to go into the code of the game, because that's where developers, being coders, will put all their little Easter eggs.
Another humiliation that William wouldn't soon forget. Night.
Why can't he just play
bankrupt
peaceful?
Bankrupt and then immediately gets bailed out specifically by the guy who made him go bankrupt.
Fredbear's Family Diner, a pizza chain that would eventually
still not become Freddy Fazbear's until a while later.
Considering the yellow with Pig Patch and Happy Frog performing right alongside Fredbear.
I just want to make a note, though. A lot of, moms and dads are older.
Yeah.
I just want to know, it says the original OG.
Yeah.
And that means...
I still don't know, for the record. I just take it as original, but...
Okay.
I still think
Sometimes
it's
that
original.
stuff needs to be.
I still have no idea, to be completely honest, about that one. I think that means original.
Okay, these people, the viewers can put it in the comments, right?
Yeah.
Like a new pirate fox, as well as a blue guitar-playing variant of the yellow Bonnie Bunny. Ultimately,
And that's when the blue one comes in.
Big, it would spawn its own cartoon show.
Hey, you called that one earlier.
Fredbear and Friends. In 1983, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza launched.
And that's where the actual beginning happens of
Those
where you actually
eyes.
know
Whoa.
of where you begin to see the beginnings. And this first restaurant, I think, is also where the movie takes place. So this is the actual beginning of where it all really starts, because we kind of saw the prequel there really recapped really fast. But this is where we actually start getting into the main plot.
You know, birds don't have teeth, by the way.
Yeah, I think they say something about how the exoskeleton needs teeth or something, but
I mean, you know,
makes
raptors.
no sense. Yeah,
Raptors probably did.
I guess so. Plus, I mean, I guess if you're making a horror game, but you know, there is a point there with teeth. Yeah.
Together, they were constantly pushing the limits of what these characters could do.
And now he also has mechanical knowledge. We're gonna kind of wonder where this goes from here. I'd like to take a guess where this kind of goes from here, how he falls here, how this fall starts.
You want me to guess?
Yes.
Well, obviously he learned from the other guy, so
Yeah.
is he gonna take his ideas? I mean,
Right, but how is he going to become a murderer? Is what I mean.
Oh, I don't know.
Because that's the beginning of, you know, that's how we become a horror game in the first place.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna be blunt there, because like how do we become a horror game from a popular French family restaurant?
Jealousy, envy. I don't.
Sure. All right.
I don't know.
You're missing out on tragedy.
What if the animatronics weren't just locked to the stage, but could freely roam the restaurant and interact with the kids? What if his
Eek.
mascot suits could become animatronics? What if
Eek indeed.
more than Afton fell in love with robotics? He had started with a dream of bringing
And
one
now he's
simple
better than the other
thing
guy.
to a robot, and tragedy was about to strike.
So that is the beginning, although I feel like it's just 15 minutes in, so we might want to get like through a little bit more before, because nothing really has happened yet.
1983,
So
business was booming with two whole
we'll go for maybe
restaurant
another 15 minutes.
They called their new invention the
Springlock.
suit. And fittingly enough,
Springlock eventually
I
becomes
see.
Springtrap.
a human
Okay.
suit, as he also left childcare duties to his eldest son, Michael. There was just one problem with that. Michael was far from the best babysitter.
Oh
The
my gosh.
interesting
Why do
thing-
they have? Why does he have a?
We'll see. We'll show that in a second. Notice that his name is Michael Afton, which is also, funnily enough, the name of the character in the movie, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
So there might be a tie there, and I think the movie is actually, like, it was paid to be a trilogy,
Oh really?
for the
you think
record,
there's
so
gonna be two
there
more?
might be a sequel.
Okay.
Yeah.
The mouth snapped shut.
And
Sensitive Springlocks
tragedy,
inside the body of each
because
clamped
Springlocks
the wriggling stuff.
Springlocks
The boy
react
was
with
dead.
anything, and they'll clamp.
The boy was taken to the hospital and was immediately given an IV. Flowers and pills filled the nightstand next
I
to his
believe
hospital bed.
Matt Pat
Damage
just
was severe.
just narrates at this point.
Younger brother's consciousness
The only thing that really happened is he died. That's it. That's it.
William would eventually bury the boy's small body in a remote location out in the woods right alongside his drive into
Think
an
this is the
unworked
minigame Midnight
The death of
Motorist.
This little boy sent the family spiraling. The boy was so racked with guilt that he was convinced that he was being
So he didn't mean to
poisoned by the
kill
ghost
him.
of his brother stuck inside the suit that took his life.
Somebody should have paid attention to the
Yeah,
kid.
someone should have paid attention to the kid. And
This is very
Yeah.
like.
this is a story racked with tragedy, and it will only get more tragic as
It's
it goes
really
on.
close to the movie. Another movie I don't like. I didn't say I didn't like this one. It was pretty interesting, but it reminds me of something like It.
Huh.
Yeah, there was tragedy.
Huh. That's interesting.
It's very hard for me to watch. Anyway,
The words "It's me" ringing through Michael's ears.
What's
I don't
inter-
understand why this is so popular.
Because it's got that big of a story. It's not on the It's because I think on the surface, it's literally, when you go into it, it's like a horror game where robot animatronics are coming after you. You gotta shut the door. And then you start looking into it, and you look into it some more, and you go, oh my god, there is a lot to this. There's a reason. It's not just there happens to be these crazy robots. There's a reason for why they're there. There's a reason for why they're attacking you. There's a reason they exist in the first place. There's a reason you're there. Who are you playing as? Suddenly you get answers, and I think that's where everyone starts to like it, because on the surface, on the beginning, it looks so nonchalant. And then there's a movie-sized story in there, which I think it deserved a movie, because, I mean, like I said, movie-sized story.
To reflect and stew on how Henry had stolen his idea for an animal.
And suddenly the blame, despite it being Michael,
when everyone else was there, how Henry had humiliated him by
falls on Henry.
And now,
technically, it was the robotic part was the one that malfunctions.
Oh,
and so it falls on Henry in Mike and
turned him out. He would make Henry hurt like he hurts.
That Pat's a good narrator, for the record.
And though Henry had suspicions about William, there was no physical evidence. Nothing that
Henry will get back at William very later in the book, and what I will have to show you is a frickin' incredible speech that sounds directly like it is out of a film. Henry will eventually get back at William, and it's gonna be really mind-blowing.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name, but I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called.
It is already mind-blowing to me that this is okay to, I don't know, it's very...
Matt Pat is putting together a story,
It makes me nauseous, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, it took me a while to get into, this, too, mainly because of probably all the reasons that it makes you nauseous as well.
Yeah.
For me, I just have to go, this is a plot to a story. No characters are real, no fictional, you know what I mean?
Okay. I get it.
There are no tensions between...
I guess it's just fictional.
You have to put it aside to where it's fictional.
Yes, I would say that, I would hope that, I don't know what the age group is from this to that.
I believe it's probably teen to whenever.
I would say that I'm sure that there's some younger kids.
I'm sure.
This stuff is just fictional. I was going to say, little kids shouldn't think that this is okay or this is real.
Which is actually why I had such it's why I had such a problem with FNAF when I was a kid.
Yes,
I actually knew
know.
to stay away from it because it was like, that doesn't feel like me right now.
Right.
And it kind of is now because I can handle interesting lore.
I think that was, 5, 6
It was
years
released
ago.
in 2016, so I would have been 7 or 8.
Yeah. Okay.
All the equipment from the diner, including the old yellow suits and security puppet, would get retired to that location.
Also, for the record, mind that all the kids will also still somewhat be alive, although in a ghost form and in the robots. They possess those robots, so while the physical form dies, they're not entirely done, and they do have some I hate to say revenge, because not revenge is too... They have solace, essentially. And you'll see that later in the same era where you get Henry's speech in, but they have solace, so, keep in mind that.
And there they would sit.
It's not entirely tragic.
The rest of 1983 and 1984 were spent quietly grieving. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the new cast of characters were a hit. Tragic memories of their yellow predecessors quickly faded. Afton kept a low profile and buried himself in work and research, quickly reaching Henry's level of engineering, even surpassing him. And while Henry slowed down to grieve, Afton...
Sorry, now he's better.
Even starting his own company, Afton Robotics, for all those pet projects that were a little bit too experimental for the regular operations of the pizzeria. The first of these experimental projects was a secret workshop under his house, a veritable bunker, which allowed him to work while still monitoring his kids via hidden security cameras. 1983. A passcode that served as a constant reminder of why the cameras were so important. Why he was down there in the first place.
1983 is when he lost his
the
kid.
promise that he had made to his son, right? I will put you back together. This was for him. All for him, right? But cameras weren't enough. He needed to solve the runaway Michael problem. He had to keep him in the house. He couldn't have another one of his kids wind up dead inside of an animatronic suit. So why not run a little experiment on Michael? You see,
now he's a mad scientist as well.
Start learning more about life, robots, the human mind, and what a fallible machine we as humans were. Our reality is so easy to manipulate with a few sensory deceptions. Deceptions like sound. With just a few sounds, he had discovered that he could alter a person's vision. He could transform blank, smooth plastic robots into lumbering, twisted nightmares. Nightmares far scarier than he could create with actual materials. They would appear organic, rotting, putrid, terrifying. These would be his means of keeping his son Michael in the house.
And now he's going to terrify the other kid because
this guy shouldn't have had breeding rights. Actually,
yeah, this guy should not have.
This
guy should not have.
This is
ever
a real guy.
No.
Okay.
Obviously. I'd also like to point out that
Jesus.
I'd also again, all characters are fictional and yada yada, but I also
who made the whole story?
I was about to say, I'd like to point out Scott Cawthon has kids of his own, so I'm like, I believe he has like 3 as well, so that's kind of interesting.
Okay.
Scott, I hope you're nice.
Not only dealing with the memories of his own guilt, the hospital
And
room
thoroughly explaining.
but also facing
By the way,
Jesus criminy, look at these.
Michael would never
They look
forget.
like shark
Years
teeth.
later, as a security guard, he would still draw pictures of them inside of his logbook.
that's Michael, by the way, later as a security guard.
I
All of
see.
these extra projects meant that his whole
Which is also interesting because Michael in the movie becomes a security guard in the same way.
life suffered even more. He was an absent father and a non-existent husband, leaving his wife cold and alone.
Why do you hide inside your walls when there is music in my halls? All I see is an empty room, no more joy, an empty tomb.
And despite her repeated demands that he leave his office and engage with the family, he refused time and time again, leaving her no choice but to leave.
You burned down my house?
You call that a house? It was like a morgue in there. You need to see your son.
The baby isn't mine.
Well, how's this?
I believe somehow the cartoon connects to the family itself. I'm not exactly sure how that does. He doesn't even explain that one.
What it felt like to be free. Charlie's murder had unlocked something in him, and he wanted more. June 20th,
He's horrible, essentially. He's a villain. He is the villain.
He lured children one by one to the back room of the pizzeria when no one was looking. At first, he was cautious. He would lure them with promises of cake and cookies. He told them that their dog had died. He would ask for
just
I'm
like-
gonna throw up. I'm gonna
Yeah.
throw up. This is
Seeing everything.
But where to hide the bodies? He couldn't
And
see
then
how.
in the suits, as we stated in the movie, by the way, if you
I
remember,
Never
in the
leave
suits.
building. They had to be stuffed inside the suits. No one
We
could
know
do
this.
things anyway, except
He
for-
does this dramatic. Matt Pat always does this dramatically.
Jeremy and Gabriel would come next, but it was easy. It was too easy. And with each little life he snuffed out, his lies got bigger. Their house was burning. They're just being kidnapped. Until the last one, where all pretense was off. He let himself get violent. Too violent.
I'll just wait for him after school. Throw a bag over his head.
Cassidy is a-
shovel and drag him into the back of my car.
This is That it was Cassidy, I believe, who was the last to go, and Cassidy specifically hates Afton and definitely gets their way back.
The long-forgotten yellow
I believe, if I remember right, Cassidy.
I'm not
is-
sure if I'm going to be able to go through this because that is horrible.
It is.
and children are watching this.
I'm not exactly certain.
This is awful.
Cassidy, for the record, I believe that was Cassidy
I'm
at
not
the
sure
end.
if I'm going to make part 2 or part
Cassi-
3. It looks
Ca-
like we're a third.
Oh yeah,
there.
it's third. Cassidy, for the record, will eventually lock Afton in a digital form, replaying his own animatronics coming to get him. So Cassidy definitely gets some revenge of their own at that point. So, desired worth it revenge there.
Let's do thirds here because
Oh, are we a third? Wait.
yeah, that's
More of a fourth.
no, that's a third one.
And then, oh yeah, I
that
guess it
would
is.
be, yeah.
They do
So,
thirds?
Is there like we can.
I mean, sure, I can send this to the other end. We can stop now.
Yeah, that's I'm very nauseous. I was ready for dinner, and now I'm not.
Oh no!
I was actually thinking about pizza at the
Oh no! I ruined your appetite with
and
the
now I'm
freaking
just
Freddy
like-
Fazbear.
Okay. I think, it'll be next month before I can...
Next month before you can finish.
Jeez, and this was just the first part?
The first
Oh,
part,
my
because
God.
the first part is the most tragic part, and then the second part, it does get slightly better from here, because the first part is where essentially all of the lore and horror happens. The second part is where kind of Afton gets his comeuppance. So we get to see...
Okay.
We get to see him essentially go through various ways of all of those things he's done come back to bite him in the ass.
Okay.
So the
I'll
second
look forward
part,
to the second part. What
part
is the
you
third
can,
part?
And then the third part is a very interesting part concerning the new games, where you kind of
Like
get
Help Wanted and-
Help Wanted and Security Breach,
Yeah.
and then also Security Breach's DLC Ruin.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of an interesting thing that I think at least Matt Pat says concerns his wife, and she kind of rebuilds the brand. And she's fine. I think I have some theories about his wife on my own, specifically how I think she's a little bit more virtuistic than how Matt Pat is gonna describe her. But it doesn't matter. The point is...
I'm going to have something carbonated.
The point is, the first part is the horror, the second part is comeuppance, and the third part is rebuilding.
Okay.
So you've gotten through the horror, or at least most of it at this point. You've gotten through the horror.
Wow. Well-
You'll get into the second.
I would have to say I would love to see another parent or two just kind of sitting there, and I mean, I don't think they'd be able to get through most of that I just sat through, and oh my God, I just feel like I've...
It's funny because we've managed to watch like a true crime show or two, and it doesn't get this reaction. How is it that FNAF has managed?
Whenever it has something to do with little kids,
I think
that
that's
really
all.
That really really gets to me.
That hurts all. I think that hurts everyone, and that's why I think it's
Because they're naive and they don't
Yes.
know any better, and that's sad, and it's
I
very
think-
horrible, so
I think that's why FNAF is kind of. I think
I gotta
that's-
get a breath of fresh air.
Let's do that. But
Okay.
I think that is why FNAF is a little bit more. It's sort of respected because it managed to go outside the lines. If you know what I mean, it managed to do something. I feel like a lot of horror games wouldn't be able to do, and be like, I'm gonna be explicitly dark, specifically with my story. I've made something that is actually that dark, and it's somehow entertaining, so watch me do this, because I'm gonna make it more interesting.
Right. So in that video game, what is it called, Spaghetti?
Yes,
Are those bears too?
they are, but Spaghetti came after,
Oh.
and
okay,
also Spaghetti was short-lived. But
Okay, I was just saying, just the
it's interesting animatronic sort of
scary
bears.
mess kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, I mean, I would say final thoughts, but I think you just said them already.
Yeah, those are my
So-
final thoughts. Until next time.
So you've gotten through most of the
I'll
horror.
have to buy some Alka-Seltzer.
There's a little bit less of. There's a little bit more. There's a slight more, just like one or two more tragedy, and then there's the comeuppance of Afton, and then there's the rebuilding bit.
Okay.
So it does get slightly. It smooths out and gets easier, and then after you finish this,
Okay.
we can finally listen to the Living Tombstone songs.
But we also have to finish one.
Yes.
Okay.
Hef Joan or
Gotcha.
HFJ1. I'd like to do
Yeah.
that as well. HFJ1.
Yeah, I'd rather
be-
go back to that.
Let's go and let's finish
Finish
HFJ1,
that, and
then
then-
we'll go back to here, and then we can finally. I love some of those Living Tombstone songs that concern FNAFs. Those are really freaking good.
And then we'll take a break from FNAF for a little while, right? And maybe record something normal,
Maybe
I don't know.
record something normal.
like Fortnite.
Well,
which is
yeah,
not
no,
really normal.
because
Just
if you, I
saying.
mean, if you look at Fortnite too, I mean,
A lot of people gunning down other
there's a
people.
lot of difference with 100 players on an island, and your thing is to kill everyone else. That does
Yeah,
feel like
I know.
there is a little bit of a thing there as
At least
well.
they do that with cute outfits, right?
Well,
right.
technically, these guys do it with cute
All right.
outfits as well.
Peace out. I'm done. Good night, everybody.
All right. But yes, I would like to play the games. By the way, I would like to play the games because I
On
am
Steam?
gonna
Okay.
get terrified. Yes,
In the dark.
yes,
And a
absolutely.
thunderstorm.
At night. Of course. I've been challenged by my community to play the games, and I
You
I
should.
will. I'm gonna
should.
scream like hell.
Well, it's good that you have the bedroom that's on the outer wall.
Outer wall as opposed to the one nearby the neighbors. Yeah,
Yes.
that's,
Yeah.
that is somewhat of something there.
All right.
So, thank you for watching. This has been a Communique video. If you'd like more videos like this, then do please subscribe, like, click the bell, all the things that you normally do, and I will see you in the next one.